What's that? All right. You hear me okay? All right, Marcel, tell me when I should start. One. Should I start? Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to probably one of your last sessions of the day, and certainly going to be showing you some very differentiating, compelling functionality. My name is Stuart Bierig. I'm the director of pre-sales for a company called Panaya. If after you have any questions, you can come up to me and ask. I have peer Eric Bauman. Raise your hand, Eric. You can always come over to him and ask him questions. He's not shy. And obviously come down to our booth. We have some cool gifts. Our agenda today is very simple. We'll briefly talk about challenges that companies have in growing, maturing environments. We'll dive right into a demo, show you some, again, there are a lot of great products downstairs, but there's no product that does exactly what Panaya does, and it's something that I think you're going to find very exciting. We'll talk a little bit of how it works, and then I'll pause for Q&A. So with that, I want to start with a quote from Forrester that basically states that as Salesforce orgs grow in complexity, that even the simplest of projects are taking longer and longer time. The reason is very, very simple, is that over time, you have an increase in custom third-party components that have interdependencies with, obviously, with the standard components as well. You have multiple development streams, maybe supporting different lines of businesses, maybe just different development teams from an agile perspective. You may have changed SIs over time, people who have contributed working components, and you just don't realize exactly what they put into your production environment anymore. And upgrades to third-party tools, changes occur all the time. Sometimes you don't read the release notes and you don't realize that more and more features are being added, some of which can potentially cause your custom functionality to break. And last but not least, we're all under time pressure. So as we're developing, if it's working, we don't want to tweak it, we don't want to make it perfect, we just move on and fix something that's actually broken. So what that does, it leaves a knowledge gap. We don't understand what a little change here is going to do to my environment. And I think we could all raise our hands and remember the time where we just did one little tiny pick list change, which I'll show in my demo, that could have a ripple effect unanticipated into areas within your environment. This is a summary of Panaya's production environment. We have 40,000 components that span standard, custom, and third-party components. And that could be a field, it could be a validation rule, it could be a process flow, it could be a visual force page, a lightning component, etc. And across those 40,000 components, we have about 2.5x interdependencies. That means that's one component referencing another component. We have customers that are using Panaya that have over 1.8 million interdependencies between their components. And the complexity is impossible to track. You'll see how Panaya helps you. So if you're looking to make that little change, do you really know what that ripple effect is going to be? Do you realize that there may be a trigger in some other object that is completely unrelated to what you're going to tweak that's going to lead to a go-live error? And that's what our demo will solve. Now, our demo scenario is very simple. You show up to a meeting early Monday morning with your VP of sales. He's done the unthinkable. He's read a book. And the book is showing how we can tweak Salesforce and optimize his sales team, optimize sales processes. And he's been using Salesforce for over a decade. He knows how agile the platform is. He knows that the changes he is asking for are declarative in nature and that can be done relatively quickly. And of course, like all lines of business, he wants the changes done ASAP, and if not immediately, maybe even into production. And this is what he wants. He wants to flatten his sales team. He wants to remove some profiles. He wants to get more people out in the field. He wants to enable mobile device support for core sales activities. I'm not even talking about Lightning. It's just getting his sales team to look at accounts and contacts on their mobile devices. He wants to tweak the sales stages in the opportunity pick list field to be more effective as per the documentation he's read in that book. And he wants to maybe tweak some approval processes to minimize the effort so he only focuses on the larger deals if possible. Right? Now, we all know as developers that on paper, these changes are very easy to accomplish. And if we had our own dev org and we were playing around, we can get them done in far less time than it's going to take me to finish the next couple of sentences. But in production, do we understand what that ripple effect, what all those interdependencies are? So Panaya basically solves a number of challenges. How can you effectively scope Salesforce requirements ahead of time to understand what the risk is and to mitigate that risk? How can you ensure that there are no go-live risks? So you're not doing your UAT in prod, and your team, all of a sudden you get that call at 3 in the morning that says, all my approval processes aren't working anymore. And also, how can I get changes done faster? How can I get more work done faster with less risk of go-live errors? Okay, with that, we're going to dive into a demo. So let's say I'm in that meeting, and I have my laptop with me. And the VP of sales is saying, Stuart, I don't understand, because I've been using Salesforce longer than you. And I know that you can get this done easy. It's a pick list change, for God's sakes. All I want to do is remove one value that nobody is using, and I want to do a couple of other minor things as well. So tell me what's so complicated. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to access one of my projects in Panaya, and I'm going to tell Patrick, give me 5 seconds, okay? I am going to click the quick analysis. I'm going to add a scoped item. Now, these are the broad range of components that Panaya analyzes. But I'm just going to type, and you know what? Patrick doesn't even remember the name of that pick list value, but remember it had the word proposal in it. So we will search across all of the components and find it, and we'll say, oh, is this the one here? Opportunity stage name, proposal price? Goes exactly, okay? Within 5 seconds, in real time, I have a summary of every single component that has a direct or indirect impact into his proposed change. That little pick list change can break things in your production environment, things that you didn't even know about. Apex classes, validation rules, approval processes, flow, process builders, you name it. Right? It can have a radical real-time effect into your production environment. And the simplest of change could add risk. Now, this summary is not enough to satisfy Patrick. He's saying, well, just because it shows up as a direct or indirectly impacted component, and I'll explain to you what that means in a minute. All right, I want to prove that it's going to break. So let's see how we're going to do that, okay? Now, I could add additional scope into my environment. So let's go ahead and let's scope that profile. We know it's VP of sales. I put in VP, I selected it. Now, did you realize that there was an Apex trigger that's directly referencing that profile? That was probably created by somebody else. I didn't realize that that's how I bypass the approval processes when my VPs go in and put in an opportunity that has a very high discount amount, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to select these two. I'm going to hit impact analysis. Now this is a visualization of the impact that we showed before in the summary. Here's my scoped item for that pick list value, and here are the other components in my environment. Again, standard, custom, third party, that directly reference that pick list value. And you can see here there's a broad ripple effect. If this formula field in my opportunity breaks, look at what's going to happen downstream. There's tremendous risk involved. So these are things I want to take a closer look at. So right away, that visualization not only gives me clues and cues to what I need to focus on, but it actually shows Patrick there are things downstream that you even haven't thought about. You're just looking at one value to go away. You don't understand what's going to happen in production. Let's go a little further, okay? Let me just get rid of that selection here. Okay, so now I'm looking at it in my list view. Now, we can extract not only component metadata, we also can extract usage. So let's say you have 50 reports that are impacted. You can sort by usage, and you can say, look, I found 35 reports that aren't even being used in your environment. That's a candidate for another project downstream. But what I'm going to do now, because I don't have a lot of time, it's a 20-minute demo, and if you want to see more, please come down to our booth. We're in the sponsor area on level 1, and we could talk about a lot of other really great capabilities. I'm going to sort by type, and I'm going to look at this Apex class, and I'm going to just view the source code. And you can see here what Panaya does is it takes that Apex code and it highlights the references. Again, either direct or indirect, and I could scroll through them. I don't have to go through 200, 300 lines of code. I just click on the references and it takes me right there so I can focus on exactly what matters to determine whether this is going to break or not. And again, I can look at, let's say, there's a large deal approval process we talked about. I'm going to view that in Salesforce. I don't have to get out. I don't have to go into setup. Panaya takes it directly there. I could see that this requires that stage in order for this specific approval process to kick off. And if that goes away, all subsequent opportunities will never leverage this approval process. That's a serious problem that we need to address. So I can scroll through these, and I could sort, I could filter by many, many different features. One powerful feature we see customers doing is just to focus on specific profiles and permission sets. How does this proposed change impact that VP of sales? So I have 28 items, you can see on the bottom right, but if I add a filter in, you'll see that that goes down to 12. So again, I can focus my impact analysis on the things that matter most to me. Now let's say hypothetically I've reviewed all of my components, and so again, what I've done is I've taken those 2 scoped items and I've identified the ones that need to be changed. I call them changes in Panaya. Again, 2 scoped items, 28 potentially impacted areas. I reviewed them and I knocked them down to, let's say, 5. I'm going to click on changes. These are the things I need to work on, in addition to those scoped items. Now, if there's a large project and I have a large team, I could highlight one or many of these. I could generate a development task. I can assign them to people on my team. That creates another entity in Panaya, and those developers can change the status of those tasks and log hours against those tasks, and we have a very, very powerful reporting tool against that. Okay, we also have the ability to view impact of testing. We have a very robust test and defect management capability built into our product. And if you are working in a regulated industry that requires detailed test evidence, I implore you to come downstairs and see a demo of that. I just do not have the time for that today, to go in the short time that I have. And we can link them all together, and we can highlight risk as risk changes in real time. Another very powerful feature is, when I'm talking to Patrick in that meeting, and I've identified all these things, I can hop into an overview of my project, go to development process, and have this concept of change conflicts. And I can go down and I can say, hey, wait a minute. That stage code that you talked about earlier, I already have an existing user request to make a change. So we have a conflict. We have multiple development streams working off the same changes. So we need to slow down here, Patrick. We understand that you want to get this done really quick in real time, but there's a lot of risk involved. So in a very short period of time, I've taken you to show some very, very compelling features within our environment. And so again, I would just like to summarize some of those capabilities right now. First, we're able to scope any component within your Salesforce org. We're able to instantly, in real time, give you a summary, as you can see on the left, of the key dependencies that relate to those scope changes. You know right away if there's risk or not. Then we have the ability to look at each one, introspect them within our environment to determine whether they're going to break or not. Okay? And finally, we have the real-time risk, which combines the dev task status, feature status, testing and defect status, et cetera, which shows a robust platform beside the core impact analysis, which again is a little bit out of scope, out of our environment. So before I pause for questions, I want to just summarize how it works. Right? What we do is we create a Panaya account for you. You then connect to your environment. You're usually a dev org for your component metadata, optionally usage out of prod. It's completely up to you. You make the connection, we install nothing in your Salesforce environment. We extract only component metadata and usage. We don't touch any of your business data. We run the analysis within the Panaya server environment. That's what gives you that real-time analysis. That's what gives you that real-time visibility into the risk of your proposed changes. We support OAuth. All your data is encrypted in transit, and obviously when it's stored within our systems. Right? We've been around for over 13 years. We've cut our teeth in doing ERP analytics for SAP and Oracle EBS customers. Many of those customers have come by our booth today because they're also Salesforce shops. And we've been GA for over a year and a half now with our Salesforce tool. We've been recognized by Gartner and Forrester, and we've won a number of demo jams over the past year because our product is truly differentiating and does provide compelling value. And the last thing I want to say is, again, what Panaya will do is it will reduce risk, it'll speed up your projects, and if you're very interested, you want to take it further, we can actually connect a trial to one of your environments, we can extract your metadata, and we can run a custom demo against your own platform. So I'm just going to leave it on this. Actually, let's hop over here. You can take a picture if you want my contact information, come down to our booth, you can speak to Eric in the back, and I have 5 minutes if you have any questions about our product. Going once, that's it, all right. Well, again, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. And again, feel free to come down to our booth if you want to see more.